Welcome back. Here's the Kovacs report, and today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I want to talk about something that's been on my mind and sort of came to a head last night. Now, a few days ago, I made a video. It was a Red Hood #1 preview first look. I was really excited about the book, and I had heard the author Gretchen Felker-Martin had a bit of a controversial past, but I hadn't dived too deep into it. I'd seen a few things, but I thought, you know what? I kind of want to avoid all that drama. We've had so much bad news over the years. I kind of banned myself from getting too involved in the dramas and digging too deep. And I said in the video that I would judge the art, not the artist. Now, a commenter did say that's exactly what they're going to do, but the opposite, that they're definitely not going to read the book because they're judging the artist instead and not the art. And I thought, okay, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Because again, like I say, I hadn't dug too deep into Gretchen Felker-Martin past until last night. So that's what this is all about. Now, I honestly believe DC need to fire Gretchen Felker-Martin, and I'm going to explain why. So, if you are a Batman Red Hood or just a superhero fan, you've definitely heard of the new Red Hood book, which was announced by DC back in June 2025. Now, it's an ongoing featuring Jason Todd, the anti-hero we all love for his sort of gritty, no-holds-barred vigilante style. But the choice of Felker-Martin as the lead writer raised a lot of eyebrows, and for good reason. Now, her history of inflammatory, violent, and outright hateful statements online doesn't just clash with DC's family-friendly image. It kind of risks alienating fans and tarnishing the legacy of iconic characters. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's set some stages here, right? So Gretchen Felker-Martin is a horror novelist best known for her 2022 book Manhunt, which gained attention for its bold post-apocalyptic take on trans issues. So, just so you know, Gretchen Felker-Martin is a trans person. She's built a reputation in the indie horror circles for a sort of unfiltered voice. But in June 2025, DC Comics announced her as the writer for this new Red Hood series, teaming up with artist Jeff Spokes. Now, the series promised to explore themes like police corruption, which sounds intriguing on paper. Jason Todd has always been about challenging authority. However, Felker-Martin's real-life rhetoric goes way beyond edgy storytelling. It's crossed into territory that promotes violence, hate, and extremism. Now, with her recent suspension from Blue Sky for mocking the shooting death of conservative commentator Charlie Kirk, the timing couldn't be worse. So let's break this down step by step. Now, before I go on with what I'm about to say, now, you may have views of Charlie Kirk. You may like what he says. You may hate what he says. You may feel that he's doing good in the world. You may feel that he is doing harm. This isn't about politics. None of what I'm about to say is about his politics. I'm not here to agree or disagree with anything he's said. And I appreciate some of the people that Gretchen Felker-Martin has made statements about, may also have said things that are abhorrent. But that's not what this is about. It really isn't. This is about a man was assassinated, and Gretchen Felker-Martin decided that the best way to deal with this was to go on to social media and celebrate the fact and double down on the fact that he'd been shot and essentially killed. And that I can't stomach. I think that is wrong. And the whole world seems to be polarized at the moment. It's like, if someone doesn't believe with your politics, then they must be a bad person. They must be a Nazi. Now, this is another term that is being thrown around all the time, purely because someone disagrees with the other person's rhetoric, opinion, or decision. And I think that in itself is terrible because it kind of desensitizes what the word Nazi means. And also, I think what it does is it kind of belittles what men and women and children did years ago during the 30s and 40s to give us the privilege of freedom and freedom of speech and the privilege of being able to go online and say things, good or bad. It really diminishes what happened back in those days. And it's making me really angry. But what's this got to do with comics? Well, Here we go. Let's break this down step by step. First off, why does this matter to DC? Well, DC Comics is part of Warner Brothers Discovery, and they are a massive entertainment conglomerate that prides itself on inclusive, heroic narratives. Characters like Batman stand for justice, not unchecked rage or bigotry. Hiring someone whose public persona is riddled with calls for violence, it's going to backfire spectacularly, especially in an era where social media amplifies every single misstep. Now, fans are already petitioning against her involvement, with groups like Stand With Us calling for accountability. So what exactly has Felker-Martin said that's so problematic? Well, buckle up, because it is a long list and I've chosen a few to show you. So one of the most glaring issues is her apparent support for terrorism and anti-Semitic views. Following the horrific October the 7th, 2023 Hamas attacks on Israel, which killed over 1,200 people and involved unimaginable atrocities, Martin not only defended the actions, but celebrated them. In resurfaced posts, she justified the massacre and even encouraged similar violence against settlers, drawing parallels to indigenous resistance. She's called for the destruction of Israel and issued threats against Jewish journalists. This isn't abstract fiction, it's real-world hate speech. And it gets worse. She's praised Osama bin Laden, claiming that, quote-unquote, blowing up the World Trade Center is probably the most principled and defensible thing he ever did. She's also stated that America deserved 9/11 and made flippant remarks about the attacks. In one deleted post, she even suggested a literal, and this again, quote unquote, literal genocide of white Americans is morally justified. Now, these aren't isolated slips. They're a pattern of endorsing extremism that has no place in mainstream comics. And her vitriol does not stop at geopolitics. No, Felker-Martin has a history of violent fantasies targeting individuals she disagrees with. Take J.K. Rowling, for example. In her novel Manhunt, she depicts Rowling being burned alive in a brutal scene. That's fictional, sure, but her real-life comments amp it up. On February 12, 2023, she tweeted a death wish: if they all had one throat, man. Referring to Rowling and other authors she accuses of transphobia. In 2023, she compared Rowling and journalist Jesse Singal to Nazi leaders like Goebbels and Himmler, suggesting they meet a similar violent end. Her obsession with Singal is particularly disturbing. She's posted graphic, sexualized rants about him, including fantasies of vivisection, autoerotic asphyxiation, and more. Phrases like bind Jesse Singal with strong rope and bring him to the quarry, give him to us alive and unspoiled. Read like horror movie dialogue, but they're her actual words on social media. She's also targeted others with threats. And again, in 2017, she told a Massachusetts city councillor, quote unquote, we're going to bury your lonely corpse in the overgrown lot behind state liquors. And her views on queer identities, she's criticised bisexual and asexual people, expressing upset over queer relationships without sex and disparaging bi and asexual folks in community contexts. Then there are her takes on TERFs, trans-exclusionary radical feminists, whom she accuses of pushing for brainwashing and genocide while painting them as having a persecution complex. Anyway, fast forward to the present, and things have escalated. Last night, just yesterday, as recording this video, Charlie Kirk was tragically shot and killed in Utah. Hours later, Felker-Martin took to Blue Sky to mock his death, posting, thoughts and prayers, you Nazi bitch, and hope the bullet's okay after touching Charlie Kirk. She doubled down by saying, about police officers in the context of her comic work, I just don't really consider them people. Now, this led to her immediate suspension from the platform. Now, remember, she's writing Red Hood, a series that reportedly deals with police corruption and features gun-toting vigilantes. Jason Todd is a complex character who's died and come back, often clashing with Batman's no-kill rule. But injecting real-world dehumanization of cops into that narrative, it's a recipe for controversy. Felker-Martin herself admitted in interviews that her biggest impression of Jason comes from comics like those by Grant Morrison, but she's also said she hasn't read key stories like Batman Hush. Now, fans on Reddit and elsewhere are already questioning if she was the right fit. So why should DC fire her? Well, it's easy, right? It's not about censoring free speech. It really, really isn't. And it's not about politics. It's not about whether you believe Charlie Kirk is a devil or an angel, right? It's about it has no place in comic books. Now, artists do have the right to their opinions, but companies like DC have a responsibility to their audience, especially when that audience includes kids and families. Superhero comics comics are about hope, heroism, and overcoming darkness, not amplifying real hate. Felker-Martin's statements could drive away Jewish fans, conservative readers, or anyone else who finds her rhetoric repulsive. I find it repulsive. We've seen boycotts before. Think of the backlash against other creators with problematic views. DC has faced criticism in the past for similar hires, and ignoring this could lead to PR nightmares, lost sales, and even legal scrutiny if their words incite harm. Moreover, in an industry pushing for diversity and inclusion, hiring someone who attacks parts of the queer community or dehumanises groups undermines that progress. DC has amazing talent out there, writers who can tackle tough themes without the baggage. Keeping Felker-Martin on board sends a message that controversy equals clicks, no matter the cost. Now, DC needs to reconsider this decision fast, right? Fire Gretchen Felker-Martin from the Red Hood Project and any future work. It's not just about protecting the brand, it's about holding the values that make superheroes super. Now, as I was making this video, something flashed up on my screen. And in fact, DC have actually moved fast on this, and they have cancelled the Red Hood book and said it is over. Now, that's all well and good. I feel sorry for the artist, Spokes, because he did some great work on the book, you know, and I feel sorry for all the people that have invested in that book and invested in Gretchen Felker-Martin. So the good thing is DC has fired this person, and I think this person should not get work in comics at all, not from any of the big publishing houses at all, because it just seems that it's a funnel for their hate, and we don't need that. For me, comics, now I grew up in, let's say, an abusive and violent family environment. There's no doubt about it. And comics for me were an escape. They were an absolute escape. I went there to get away from all the hell that was going on in my real world. I love comics. As a child, I read stories. You know, I didn't look at who the creator was. I was young. But as I got older, you know, I wanted to know, who are these people that I admire? They're writing and drawing my favorite stories. And I would find out about those creators. And of course, you're influenced by those creators. And that's where Gretchen Felker-Martin needs to be stopped, because they should not be influencing people. For example, even like recently, I reread Deadly Class, right, by Rick Remender, right? And Rick Remender is kind of very similar to me. We have very same interests, like skateboarding, punk music, and all the other kind of stuff. And, you know, while I was reading through it, there's lots of references to punk bands that I hadn't heard of, you know, so I would Google them. I want to know what, you know, someone I admire listens to. Maybe I like it too, because, you know, they think and feel the same as me. And this is the problem with this. This is a problem with this shit. If you hire people like this, you are not just telling stories, right? You are potentially influencing people for right or wrong. And I think that has to stop. Should never have been hired in the first place. Should be kicked out of the comic book community 100%. And again, this isn't about politics. This is not about politics. If someone goes on and celebrates someone's death like that, it is wrong, right? I'm sure people have sort of online right now. In fact, I know they are. There's a Red Hood thread on Reddit right now discussing this very subject, and people are defending her. Why? Someone died. It doesn't matter that you don't believe in what they say, or you don't like what they say. We're not in the 1940s, okay? And all of you people that are defending this, they cry about freedom of speech, unless it's something they disagree with, and then they call for violence, and it has to stop. Gretchen Felker-Martin and their ilk, again, like I say, need to be pushed out of comics. And that, my friend, is why I'm not going to be reading Red Hood. And I can't anyway, because they've cancelled it. And damn well right. They need to give that book to someone else. I mean, Jeff Spokes, like, again, I feel sorry for this whole mess, this absolute whole mess. There's a family there and children that now don't have a father, which is terrible. I feel sorry for the creatives that have worked on this book, and their work is now thrown down the drain. There's just so many people that suffer, right? Absolutely suffer when people take these kind of decisions into their own hands, and when people like Gretchen Felker-Martin absolutely support these things. It's saying it's okay to shoot someone and kill them if you don't like what they're saying, right? And it doesn't matter that, you know, maybe Charlie Kirk said something bad about the trans community. But what it does is it sets a blanket example that if anyone you disagree with, right, then it's okay and justified if you disagree with them, irrespective of the subject that you disagree with them about, to go out and use violence as a means to an end. That's the problem. That is the problem right there. It blanket allows people that can be influenced by what they're reading and the creators they follow to justify Terrible, terrible actions. And it's really, really upset me. I think just doing this video now, I didn't realize how much it had upset me, because again, it sounds like I'm caring more about comics here, and that's not true. I definitely care about Charlie Kirk and his family here. But what I want to do is I want to use this, as an example to say that stop putting these people on our books, because all you're going to do is you're going to get more people doing exactly the same terrible things out in the open. And it's got to stop right now. Marvel and DC are two of the biggest culprits for doing this. And I've been saying it for years. Okay, and I get shot down all the time. It's not about politics, all right? It's about setting a good example, all right? And it's about making comics a safe space for people all over the world, like me as a child who needed an escape, like the other guy down the road who maybe lives on his own and the comics are his thing that make him happy. Whatever the reason you read comics, it shouldn't be a place where we get this bullshit ideology forced down our throat and we're being told that it's okay to go and kill cops. It's okay to go and kill a politician if you don't like what they're saying. It's okay to do it because they said something that's really bad. Well, guess what? That's called free speech, right? And you keep fighting for free speech until someone says something you disagree with. Even if he says the worst fucking terrible things, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you can go out there and promote violence against them, right? That's the government and the law enforcement's job, not yours. Anyway, it's turned into a bit of rant, which I didn't want it to do. But I really wanted to just sort of get this off my chest. I'm sure people will agree with me. I'm sure people will disagree with me. But you know what? At the end of the day, right, this channel is really about how I feel about comics. And that's how I feel. So I'm sure there will be comments. I'm sure there will be downvotes. I'm sure I'll get another email telling me to die. But that's fine. I've said my piece. I'd like to hear yours. Drop them in the comments. Like the video if you like the video. Hit subscribe if you can. I'd really, really appreciate it. And also, don't read Red Hood.